Shalom, Underground to Canada, written by Barbara Smucker. We're going to read chapter 1. Night music droned through the slave quarters of Jeb Henson's Virginia plantation. The words couldn't be heard, but they were there beneath the rise and fall of the melody. Jewel Lily hummed them as she sat in the doorway of her cabin, waiting for Mammy Sally to come home from cooking in the big house kitchen. She was as still and as black as the night. The words of the song beat in her head. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Old Massa Henson didn't like this song. He said it came when there were whisperings and trouble around. There were whisperings tonight. They murmured beneath the chirping of the crickets. They crept from ear to ear, as soundless as the flickering of the fireflies. Even though June was just beginning, and there was summer heat mixed with honeysuckle sweetness in the air, Drew Lily shivered. She tried pulling her coarse tow shirt about her knees, but it had long since grown too short. It wasn't that Massa Henson didn't give her clothes. He was good to his slaves. It was just that she grew faster than any other 12-year-old on the plantation. She's tall enough to work beside the grown woman in the cotton fields, Massa Henson said. Mammy Sally scolded about this. My June Lily is just a girl that's grown too fast, she pleaded. Grown women had to pick more cotton and they worked longer hours. It was because Jewel Lily was born in June and Mammy Sally liked lilies that she got her name. Most folks slurred the words together and they came out Jewel Lily, but they didn't for Mammy Sally. There were no rain games tonight in the dusty yard before the cabin doors. The children whimpered, fretful and uneasy. Drew Lily went inside the cabin where she lived alone with Mammy Sally. The flickering pine knot in the corner fireplace held blue flames. They had no warmth. There was loneliness and emptiness inside. When Mammy Sally came, the warmth would spark out in the fire and the shadows would bring sleep. The little slave cabin was tight-roofed and plank-floored, as were all the other slave cabins at Massa Henson's. Better than any other slave cabin in all of Virginia, Mammy Sally declared. She liked the big house, too, where it was cool and wide and the logs were hewn smooth against the walls, and the plank floors were shined and polished. The whisperings that hung in the nighttime air had started this morning when old John, the coachman, drove Missy Henson into town. Drew Lily and the other slaves heard about it later. Missy Henson sat uneasy and restless in the carriage seat. She talked to old John of moving north and of selling things. She talked of how her husband, Jeb Henson, was old and sick and had to go to the hospital in Richmond. She said they had no kin to leave things to. The land's used up, old John, she mourned. It just has no more life to raise tobacco or cotton or any other crops. Old John agreed. He knew that the masters in Virginia had used the land until it bled and died. They had no crops for sale these days, so they were beginning to raise and sell slaves instead. They were fertile land in the deep, deep South. The masters there needed slaves to work their fields. When Missy Henson and old John drove into town, there was excitement on the courthouse lawn. Missy Henson pretended not to see. Old John, who couldn't read, heard the white folks speak of handbills plastered on the courthouse door. We'll pay top prices tomorrow for prime field hands, they read. Old John's hand trembled on the horse's reins. A slave trader from the deep south was coming to their town to buy tomorrow. Jeb Henson was making plans to move. Old John and the other slaves at the Henson plantation knew about the buying of Virginia slaves. Word of it spread like a wind-whipped flame to one plantation and then another. Rumors spread. Some said the buyer lined the slaves up one by one like cows and pigs. They'd sell a mother to one man and all her children to another. In the deep South, folks said, even the little children tote hoes bigger than themselves to chop the cotton. Then they get whipped because they don't finish the work the overseer set out for them. Massa Henson didn't whip much on his plantation. Too soft-hearted, some of the slave owners said. This afternoon, when old John came home from his trip to town, he hobbled straight to the stable boys. A slave trader from the deep South is coming tomorrow, his voice trembled. The stable boys ran like hopping toads to the children who carried water to the fields, hands, and the cotton rolls. A slave trader from the deep South is coming, they whispered. Up and down the cotton rows, the message spread faster than a winging bird. Drew Lily heard chopping cotton in the blistering sun. When lunchtime came, she ran to the big house to tell Mammy Sally. For one instant, Mammy Sally straightened her tall body and lifted her proud head. "Oh, Lord," she said, "we is needing your protection now." Then Mammy Sally drew her lips together and was peaceful. Fears that had flapped around Drew Lily's head like blackbird wings flew away. Mammy Sally would take care of her. She was Mammy's only child. Now, the night had come. Drew Lily huddled shivering near the cabin door. The plank floor of the cabin was warm and dry. The whippoorwill called its evening song, and the round orange moon spread its gentle light. But her feet were cold. Her hands were icy. A strangeness spread about like an uneasy quiet before a storm. Then Mammy Sally came, her bare feet silent on the soundless dust. She clasped Drew Lily's hand, but the coldness and the strangeness didn't go away. She pulled Drew Lily close, bending towards the small blue flame. The light showed indigo across her strong-lined face. It glistened in her troubled eyes. "June Lily, child," she spoke softly, rocking slowly back and forth. "You know the slave traders in our town. Some of the slaves is to be sold." "Who, Mammy?" Drew Lily was cold again and shivered. "There's no way of knowing." Mammy shook her head. "Massa Jensen's sick and gone away. And Missy Henson says there's no way to keep us all together. Most of us have known no other home." Mammy rubbed her hand across the comfort of the floor. "This is where you were born, June Lily." Drew Lily knew all this. How Massa Henson was better to his slaves than most. How her daddy died the day that she'd been born from being bitten by a snake. All those things from long ago. Safe things that tied together with planting time and harvest time. Then Mammy stood. She lifted her head high, and the white head rag that covered her graying hair showed soft and a little golden in the firelight. She straightened her shoulders, almost reaching to the top of the cabin door. Her lips drew firm, and her eyes pierced deep into Drew Lily's. In them was the sting that a bullwhip makes and the hurt of a wounded possum. "We've got to pray hard, June Lily, and if the good Lord can't help us now, we've got to believe he's going to help us soon." "Yes, Mammy." Drew Lily felt pride in this tall, handsome woman. "There's 3 things I want to say to you, child." Mammy drew Lily close again. "Pray to the good Lord. Remember to be proud that you had a strong, fine daddy and a mammy that loves you." Mammy Sally paused. She pressed her mouth against Drew Lily's ear. "This is secret talk, I'm telling you now. Hold it quiet in your head and never let it out of your mouth. There's a place the slaves been whispering about around called Canada. The law don't allow no slavery there. They say you travel north and follow the North Star, and when you step onto this land, you are free. Rustling footsteps outside the cabin caused Mammy's arms to stiffen. She pushed Julie gently away and, lifting her voice, spoke crossly. Now, Julie, you crawl down on that blanket in the corner and go to sleep. Before you know it, 4 o'clock will be around and the morning bell will be ringing for another day's work. Talking, for those who might be listening from the outside, was always different from talking inside to those around you. Lily knew this and smiled. She lay down on the hard floor beside the fireplace and wrapped a thin blanket around her. Canada, she thought the name again and again in her head. The slave trader meant some kind of trouble, but there had never been trouble on the Henson plantation. She and Mammy Sally wouldn't be sold. Lily yawned and hummed a quiet tune, and the unsung birds made her smile and forget the trouble-filled day. Masses sleep in the feather bed. Niggers sleep on the floor. When we get to heaven, there'll be no slave no more. So that was the end of chapter 1, and we will continue with chapter 2 in the next video.